What if your desire isn't desire at all? What if it's grief in disguise? A wound dressed up as craving. They don't talk about it, but you feel it. Not during the day, not while you're working or scrolling or pretending to laugh. No, it comes later. When the world goes quiet, when there's no one watching, when your body is still, but your soul is not. Your phone is in your hand. The room is dim. The air feels thick, and deep inside, something is pulling you. An ache, a restlessness, a whisper you've tried to ignore. So, you scroll, you click, you fantasize. Not because you're evil, not even because you're lustful, but because you are empty. You tell yourself it's stress, just biology, just being human. But even as you chase the image, you're not really there. Your eyes are watching, but your soul is disconnected. And when it's over, silence. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind, the kind that makes you wonder what's wrong with you. The kind that doesn't feel like release, but regret. That guilt, it doesn't come from morality. It comes from meaninglessness, because deep down you know this isn't about pleasure. It's about pain. The kind no one sees, the kind you never learn to speak about. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. What if that's what you're doing? What if this isn't lust at all, but escape? Escape from boredom, from loneliness, from shame, from the unbearable weight of being unseen, even by yourself. You don't just want her. You want to be held. You want to be seen. You want to be known without performing. But instead, you chase pixels, moments, bodies, a temporary sense of aliveness that fades before it even lands. And afterward, the same void, the same ache, the same unanswered questions. You're not chasing her. You're chasing the part of you that she reminds you of, because the real craving isn't for her touch. It's for your truth. It's not about lust. It's about loss. The loss of your connection to your body, your purpose, your soul. Lust is not the enemy, it's a signal. A desperate flare shot from your unconscious, saying, something's missing. Please come back to yourself. There is a wound inside you, one you didn't ask for, one you didn't choose, but one you carry. And if you're honest, really honest, you know what I mean. Because you felt it, not just afterward, but even during, even in the height of desire, the most intense climax. You feel distant, like you're watching yourself, playing a role, following a script. You tell yourself, this is masculinity, this is power, this is freedom. But if it's freedom, why do you feel trapped? If it's power, why do you feel powerless afterward? Because deep down, you know, you're not addicted to sex. You're addicted to escape. And every time you run from the ache, you teach your nervous system. Stillness is unsafe. You train yourself to chase, to scroll, to seduce. Not for intimacy, but for evidence. Evidence that you're still wanted, still relevant, still something. But the more you chase, the less you feel. Because nothing real comes from performance. No connection grows in a mask. And so begins the cycle. Crave, chase, climax, collapse. Loneliness doesn't leave, it hides. Shame doesn't fade, it sinks. And your soul doesn't heal, it numbs. So I'll ask you, when did you first feel invisible? When did your desire stop being an invitation for love and become a distraction from pain? What if the part of you that you're starving isn't your body at all? What if it's the boy inside, the one who never learned how to be seen without earning it? Because what you call lust might just be loneliness in disguise. Let's go back, not to the addiction, but to before it, before the habit, before the fantasy, before the pixelated chase. Let's go back to the first time you felt unwanted. It probably wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no betrayal, just something small, almost invisible. Maybe your dad came home and didn't look at you. Maybe your mom hugged you, but her eyes were still on her phone. Maybe someone laughed when you cried or called you too sensitive. Maybe you got punished not for doing something wrong, but for being you, loud, soft, curious, wild. And that's when the split began. You stopped asking, stopped needing, stopped being you, because something inside said, if I show them my real self, I'll lose their love. And so, you built a version of you that was easier to accept. The quiet one, the strong one, the achiever, the funny one. You learned to be what they needed and forgot to be who you are. That's not trauma with a capital T. It's not war or abuse or disaster, but it's something just as powerful. The slow erosion of your soul. You adapted so well that even now, as an adult, you don't even realize how much of your life is built on fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being too much. Fear of being not enough. So you seek control. And the easiest place to feel control? Fantasy, pleasure, porn. Because in that world, no one can reject you. No one sees your flaws. No one calls you needy or broken. You are wanted, desired, powerful. But here's the paradox. The more you use fantasy to feel whole, the more it reminds you that you are not. You begin to chase not just the image, but the identity. You want to be the one who is always wanted, always craved, always in control. But deep down, you're just the boy who never learned how to cry, how to say, I'm scared, how to say, I need you, how to say, please stay. So instead of asking, you perform. Instead of grieving, you chase. Instead of healing, you hide. And the worst part? It works. For a while. Until it doesn't. Until one day the pleasure doesn't hit. The screen feels cold. The silence after feels heavier than the desire before. Because you're not a machine. You're a human being with a soul that's starving for meaning, not just dopamine. And that soul, it remembers. It remembers when you were 5, and your tears were ignored. When you were 8, and your questions annoyed people. When you were 12, and you learned to lie just to belong. It remembers every moment you shrank, smiled, stayed silent, just to avoid being abandoned. And now, when you chase desire, you're not chasing lust. You're chasing proof that you matter. But let me ask you something brutal. What if she says yes, but you still feel empty? What if the climax fades, and the ache is still there? What if no amount of being wanted will make up for the fact that you don't know how to want yourself? This isn't about addiction. It's about amnesia. You've forgotten who you are beneath the performance. You've traded your soul for survival. And now you're starving in a house full of mirrors. Every click, every scroll, every image, not feeding your hunger, but deepening it. And the part of you that watches all this unfold, that quiet voice inside, it's not judgment. It's your soul, begging you to come home. You start noticing the pattern. It's not just about sex. It's not even about the body. It's about the pause, the moment right before the click, the breath you take before you surrender again. It's a ritual, one that says, I can't take this anymore. And also, I don't know where else to go. You think you're chasing pleasure, but really, you're trying to outrun pain. Pain from the silence in your room. Pain from the way you feel nothing in a crowded space. Pain from the relationships that never see you. Pain from a version of yourself that you're too exhausted to carry. And so you search for something immediate, something easy, something that gives the illusion of connection without the risk of being known. Because being known, that's terrifying. What if they see how broken you are? What if they see that you're not always strong, not always funny, not always fine? So you choose the screen, because the screen doesn't ask questions. It doesn't demand vulnerability. It lets you pretend, just for a moment, that you are exactly what you want to be. Wanted, confident, untouchable. But here's the price. Every time you choose illusion over intimacy, you teach yourself that love is dangerous. And every time you do it again, You make real connection harder to bear. Because real connection is messy. It's slow. It's uncertain. It exposes you. It asks for patience, honesty, humility. And porn? It asks for none of that. That's why it's addictive. Not because of what it gives, but because of what it lets you avoid. Avoiding the awkwardness, avoiding the disappointment, avoiding the need to say, I feel lonely. Avoiding the possibility of being rejected. But every avoidance is a sacrifice. You sacrifice your aliveness for comfort. You trade reality for control. You abandon your capacity to love just to make it through the night. And over time, you forget what love even looks like. You start confusing intensity with intimacy. You think desire is proof of worth. You measure yourself through the lens of attraction, and you lose the ability to be seen without performing. This is why you feel more alone after the release, because you didn't just lose semen. You lost self-respect. You lost presence. You lost the moment you could have faced yourself instead. And deep down, you know, this isn't freedom. It's a prison made of glass. You can see everything, but you touch nothing. You talk about recovery, but you treat it like punishment, as if sobriety is a sentence instead of a return, as if removing porn is removing your identity. But it's not. You are not your cravings. You are not your browser history. You are not the shadow you keep feeding because you're too scared to face the light. You are the one who noticed. You are the part of you that said, enough. The part that still believes in something deeper, even if you don't know how to find it yet. So let's say it plainly. You're not broken. You're grieving. Grieving the years you spent performing. Grieving the versions of you that never felt safe to exist. Grieving the touch you needed but never received. Grieving the mirror that only reflected shame. And real healing? It's not about stopping a habit. It's about reclaiming your soul, not just through willpower, but through remembering. Remembering that you are still worthy of love, even when you feel dirty, even when you fail again, even when your hands shake and your breath is shallow. You are worthy not because you're pure, but because you're real. And the real you is not built in fantasy. He's forged in fire, in confession, in the slow return to the parts of yourself that got lost in survival. You are not your urges. You are the awareness behind them. And that awareness, it's whole. Let's talk about the shadow. Not the one in your room. Not the one behind you in the light. But the one inside. The one you keep chained behind silence and shame. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The part of you you've disowned, disapproved of, rejected. It's not just your addictions. It's the fear you never voiced, the anger you swallowed, the love you were too afraid to need. It's the part of you that breaks rules, seeks danger, longs to scream, but always ends up whispering, I'm fine. And the more you ignore it, the louder it gets. Porn isn't just a habit. It's a symptom of disconnection, of emotional exile, of a psyche split in two, one side performing for the world, the other starving in the dark. You don't heal this by deleting bookmarks. You don't recover by punishment. You heal by looking directly at what you've been running from. Because here's the truth. What you crave isn't the image. What you crave is return. A return to wholeness, to truth, to a version of you that isn't fragmented by guilt and pretending. Your shadow isn't evil. It's unintegrated. It holds your power, your sensuality, your vulnerability, your ability to rage and grieve and love without filter. When you repress it, you don't become pure. You become numb. You become polite, predictable, disconnected, and quietly miserable. But when you face it, when you say, yeah, I feel lust, I feel anger, I feel shame, loneliness, need, that's not weakness. That's resurrection. You begin to remember you weren't born numb. You weren't born ashamed. You were taught to fear your own intensity. You were conditioned to split from your rawest truth in order to be accepted. So healing isn't becoming someone else. It's becoming who you were before the world told you to behave. That means honoring your shadow, not indulging it blindly, but listening to it, asking, what are you really trying to say? What part of me have I abandoned to survive? Because every craving is a message, every compulsion is a compass, and if you trace it back far enough, beneath the urges, beneath the guilt, beneath the repetitive cycle of seeking and shame, you'll find something sacred, a younger you, still waiting to be seen. Not for what you can perform, not for what you can offer, but simply for being. And this is where the real work begins. Not in abstinence, but in integration. Not in repression, but in awareness. Not in punishing yourself, but in understanding yourself. Imagine waking up one day and not feeling at war with your body, not hiding your desire, not apologizing for your needs, but holding them with clarity, with strength, with dignity. This is the paradox. The more you suppress, the more control it has over you. But the moment you name it, hold it, breathe through it, it loses its grip. You stop being the addict. You become the witness. And from that place, you're no longer just surviving urges. You're transforming them into art, into honesty, into connection. Because that's the gift the shadow offers when you stop running. The power to feel fully, to live truthfully, to love without needing to vanish in the process. So if you're still struggling, if you relapse today, if you feel lost, if you want to give up, let me remind you, you're not starting over. You're continuing. Every time you reflect, every time you choose awareness over reaction, every time you say, this isn't who I want to be, you are already changing. Healing isn't linear, but it is sacred. And it's happening even now, even here, even in your doubt. You're not late, you're not broken, you're just returning. So tell me, what part of you are you ready to meet again? And can you, for once, welcome him home?